All right. As we start, Outdoors Queensland respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands where we gather right across Queensland, and I'm not sure if we've got any interstate visitors today, but we pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important roles that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples play on the land, sky and waterways that are used for outdoor activities. I'm coming to you today from Brisbane, Meanjin, and if you'd like to, happy for you to pop in the chat the place and country you're joining us from today. Just think it's a nice way to start the meeting off. We also acknowledge funding provided by the Queensland Government to support outdoor activities right across Queensland, and appreciate that. So welcome to today's session. I'm Dom Courtney, Executive Officer of Outdoors Queensland. Mark Squires, our Operations Manager, is my co-host for today's session. Welcome members of Outdoors Queensland. I'm not sure if we've got any of our board members on today or any of our life members for that matter, but everyone's welcome, and yeah, we really thank you for joining us. As I said, we're recording the sessions, and we are going to make recordings. They'll be available on our website and through YouTube. I think this is our 13th scheduled episode of Coffee and Conversation for this year, so lucky number 13. So we'll just have to see how we go with today's session. We changed the format a couple of weeks ago and split the agenda up into recurring topics and new topics. We'll just go through those first couple of recurring topics and the reminders and public consultation. And then I think the rest of today's session will be very much focused on the changes to the COVID protocols. So yeah, if everyone's happy with that, I guess the first thing there up the top, first dot point is that Outdoors Queensland Awards, our nominations are open right now. Mark distributed an e-news earlier today. And in that, I think the key thing in there is asking people to consider nominations, sharing the stories that you have for people who are doing awesome things in the outdoors organisations. I went to the Scouts Queensland AGM last week. It seems a long time ago, back in the olden days, before there was a lockdown. So it was really impressive, the stories that were told at the AGM of the work that the Scouts did last year to keep everything going. And we know there's so many other stories right across the outdoor sector. So I'd really like you to consider celebrating those stories and sharing them with us by making some nominations. Really, I think we need to do it now more than ever to show the great things that are going on in that space. A couple of other things, the Active Queenslanders forums, we held them in Ipswich, Brisbane, in Redlands last month. Now there's several scheduled for July, and I guess it's going to depend on the lockdowns and what happens with them. So there's Logan, Cairns, Townsville, Yeppoon and Gladstone. Hopefully most of them will be able to go ahead. And then in August, they're scheduled for Sunshine Coast and Brisbane. So it'll be a bit of watch this space on that one. But if you do get a chance to attend any of those, I'd encourage you to do so. I want to see more outdoor people applying to them, but also there's some really good information that can really help you in your organisation, whether that's as a volunteer or a paid worker in this space. So there's different sessions and there's details on their website. The other one there, just a review of these sessions. We haven't made any decisions about changing to frequency or time, but we did run an extra special session last week. I guess it's our unscheduled session, just to talk about the changes that came in last week. So we might keep doing that too if we need to. So we'll see how we go with that.
Can I just jump in for a second?
Yes, mate.
Hopping back to the awards for a moment, and noting that, in fact, we have a new award just been announced this week, sponsored by the AQIA, and it is called, let me get the name exactly right.
The Workforce Development Award?
Workforce Development Award, indeed, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to mention that, mate, but thank you for the reminder. Yeah, so that's in our bulletin today, and the criteria for that are on the website, but that's about organisations that are about development of workforce, including volunteers. So we use worker in the broadest possible way, being the outdoor sector. I've said it many times, but anyone who thinks that volunteers aren't workers has never been a volunteer. So it's about either in-house training, organisations that are taking on trainees in the outdoor sector, also about organisations that are supporting external training, like through an RTO or through a university or other external training. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at for that award, as organisations that are really doing great things in outdoor workforce development. So thanks for that reminder, Mark. Yeah, so we'll just move on quickly and go through a whole heap of stuff here. So inside the outhouse, their next session's on Monday, I believe. I'm not sure if, I think Dave Maskell's on here. I don't think I saw Pete's name on the list, but Dave, do you want to very quickly tell us what your topic is for next week?
Yeah, hi Dom, and hi everybody. Coming to you from Brisbane lockdown. Next week, it's all about what's on your menu. We're going to talk about food in the outdoors and topics around, burning questions around the aspect of, is food part of programming or not on your camp or school program? Do you intentionally make it part of programming, or is it an optional add-in? A requirement, and we're encouraging everybody to bring their favourite menus and or campfire cooking recipes with them to share amongst the community. It should be a pretty interesting conversation, and hopefully we're all out of lockdown. But Monday, 6:13 p.m. on the East Coast, and everywhere else adjust accordingly.
Thanks, Dave. Can I suggest a snappy title that Pete may or may not just reject? Is an outdoor army marches on its stomach for that session, mate.
Oh, I like that. I'm working on it right now, actually, so I'm multi-skilling this morning.
Okay, I won't take that. I'll take any offence at that. So the next one is the Australian Curriculum Review. That closes the 8th of July, so it's only a week away for that one. I just encourage you to consider making a submission in that one. The nominations, this is where I was going to mention the new award, but Mark's covered that off for me. So that closes in August. Again, the forums, a reminder there from Active Queenslanders. The Better Futures Forum is the other one. That's all about enhancing or about climate change and climate action. So that's on in August. And the NOAC, the National Outdoor Ed Conference, is the end of September, early October. So I just want to mention that. The other one that's a new one on there is the Department of Environment and Science is seeking public submissions on that Noosa area draft management plan. So it covers quite a few national parks up at Noosa, around in that region. So it's worth a look. It closes 25th of July. So we'll put some information out through our newsletter that went out today on that, but we'll make a submission, but also encourage others to make submissions in that, because the management plans that parks put together are significant about directing what activities take place and where they happen and how they happen. So they're the document that, if we get a chance to have a say on, they are an important piece of work. So yeah, I'd really encourage you to have a look at that one. Any questions or comments on those ones as we go along? Please either put your hand up or sing out, but if not, we'll keep on moving. So Laurie's just put a comment in the chat that the NOAC dinner's nearly sold out. So haven't registered and want to attend. There's 5 seats left. And if you're really hungry, I guess you could take 5 seats. Thank you. Just looking at the rest of it. Mark shared quite a few comments there, but yeah, all right, we'll keep on going. So over to the world of COVID restrictions and protocols. So the key piece, I guess, here is we've published quite a lot of information on the changes to COVID restrictions and the protocols and what it means for outdoor activity operators. As you're probably aware, the Premier and the Chief Health Officer announced this morning that the lockdown is going to end at 6 o'clock for impacted areas other than Brisbane and Moreton Bay Council areas. That doesn't change anything at all for the remainder of Queensland that hasn't been in lockdown. And we need to remember that the lockdown's only been for certain council areas, so it's not for all of Queensland. The lockdown is going to continue for Brisbane and Moreton Bay council areas for at least a further 24 hours through to 6 o'clock tomorrow, Saturday evening, with another announcement apparently going to be made tomorrow morning. So from 6 o'clock today, there'll be 3 different zones in place, I guess, for at least 24 hours, which is Brisbane and Moreton Bay council areas still in lockdown, the other SEQ council areas and Townsville and Palm Island, who have been in lockdown for the last few days. There's additional measures in place for 14 days until 5:59 p.m. Friday, 16th of July. So that includes mandatory mask wearing indoors and outdoors where physical distancing isn't possible. You must carry a mask when outdoors, seated food and drink service, and 1 person per 4 square metres indoors and 1 person per 2 square metres outdoors. So that's in those ones. For the remainder of Queensland, the restrictions are as per the roadmap, masks recommended, not mandatory, and 1 person per 2 square metres indoors is probably the key difference there. So I think for the rest of today's session, I'd like to focus on the impacts of these restrictions and the rules that will apply once we're out of lockdown. So I guess the question is that okay with everyone? Is that all right if we position it that way? Because I think that's the way of moving forward with a lot of this change. So a few thumbs up already. So yeah, righto, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not just barking up the wrong tree. So there is some good news. So the latest, recent relaxation from 1 a.m. last Friday, where indoor dining is allowed, there's no longer any restrictions on self-service food and buffets other than normal food safety. But obviously you can't have buffet self-service in lockdown where only takeaway and home delivery services are available. So that's a bit of a strange one, I think, in that space. So I'm not sure what happens if you're running a service and still continuing during a lockdown, if that's possible. So I think it's probably best to err on the side of caution on that one. Any comments on that one? Nope. Okay. It's good news. We've been calling for the buffet self-service for a long time. It came through and then everything else seemed to go downhill. I'm not blaming buffets at all for that, but yeah, it's important point. I did want to go through the changes that came in last week for those people who didn't join us, who weren't able to join us for our unscheduled session last Friday. We had a few, and I was really grateful for the people who did join us last Friday. So the COVID safe industry plans from last week, that under the direction last week, restricted businesses needed to follow a COVID safe checklist for restricted businesses, and industry plans are no longer in operation. They've been revoked. So we've specifically requested advice, like I say there, about whether outdoor operators are restricted businesses and what category of Schedule 1 they fall under, which then will let us confirm what restrictions actually apply. So there's a whole heap of wording on today's presentation because I want to put it up on the screen to show you. So we've asked for that. We haven't got advice back on that. I'm pretty confident outdoor education providers will be considered restricted businesses. That's why we had an industry plan, and that's why we had that industry plan that continued even after the outdoor recreation providers plan was no longer in operation in April. So, but I want to also get it confirmed exactly which category of Schedule 1 Queensland Health considers it to come under. And I think they're going to tell us that it's the temporary accommodation area. But again, I want to get that absolutely crystal clear. So this is probably trying to get to the point of applying it to outdoor operators. As I said, the industry COVID safe plans are no longer required. So any indoor events and venues now have to comply with these COVID safe checklists, which have been published. If you're an outdoor only organisation, it's an unrestricted business, so you're not required to comply with the checklist for the outdoor activities. But if you've got any indoor spaces that are associated with your club or organisation, things like indoor dining, and that would apply to scouts and guides with meeting in a hut, that sort of thing, and other clubs. You need to comply with the checklist. So we've also contacted Education Queensland to ask whether their operational guideline for state schools will be updated, because at the moment, my understanding, last week, their guideline did say that schools should only go to school camp where their school camp's complying with the industry plan, and then it has a second part, or if the principal decides that appropriate risk management's in place. So there is that, but it's specifically still referred to industry plans. So once the industry plan's revoked, we just wanted to make sure it would be updated. Any questions as we go along? As I said, just put your hand up or sing out. All right. So occupant density requirements, and this is now going to change depending on where you are in Queensland. As I said, there's 3 different zones, I suppose, but there will be for a little while. Hopefully it's only a little while. So the occupant density requirements for indoor venues and events are set out in the checklist. We've actually requested an exception be made for occupant density for school-aged children as per the exemption provided in our industry plan for outdoor ed providers. So yeah, still waiting on the answers to that one as well. And Mark's just shared the checklist, the existing checklist that's been published in the chat. I saw Tim said the chair suggested the 1 per 4 square metre restrictions will stay in place for 2 weeks after the last known case. Yeah, and that's a different one. I just noticed Jess's question, re lockdown camp, could we legally have traded during the lockdown? I'm a bit unclear about that one, to be honest, and I'm not sure what other people have opinions. It seems to me that there were statements out there saying, you know, if you're in short-term accommodation, you could stay there. So I would say that if you think about it from if your customers are in temporary accommodation at a camp, then they could stay there. So then I guess that's saying yes, but I don't know technically where it fits on that. So that was a big question that I actually had this week, and I haven't got a definite answer to it. Does anyone else want to talk to that question? No. Jess, do you have further questions? Oh, okay. All right. The other big one that came in, so they said from 1 AM Friday 9th of July, so next Friday, checking Queensland app will be mandatory for a lot of new sectors in addition to hospitality. And you can see it covers off on quite a bit of our stuff. I've got that little list. I copied that from the website last week. I haven't checked if they've updated that list for others as well, but that's just a segment of the list of new sectors. So again, we've requested consideration from outdoor ed operators for the system that was in place for school groups under the revoked outdoor ed providers industry plan. At the moment, I think there is wording in there that says if you're temporarily unable to use the Check in Queensland app, you can use a different system, but that's really aimed at if you don't have phone service or a couple of other things. It's not intended to be a long-term solution, I think, under the existing rules. So we're asking to get that clarified in there. All right. So I guess the big question that I probably wanted to flag is what we're doing right now for outdoor operators. So one of the key things we're doing is talking to groups of people and literally phone calls, emails, as well as sessions like this to know we're understanding the issues that are being faced. There's issues out there for outdoor ed operators, but there's also issues being raised by other outdoor operators. The key question really comes into whether you're operating a restricted business activity or undertaking. So for a lot of outdoor, as I said earlier, outdoor operations, if it's purely outdoor activities, then it's not included in the restricted area, so the checklist doesn't apply. But anyone who's operating a restricted business activity or undertaking, then the checklist and that sort of thing does apply. So we had that special session last Friday. We discussed all these changes. Out of that, we sent a heap of questions to Queensland Health through Sport and Rec. And Sport and Recreation have been really helpful, and I know that they are chasing up these issues with Queensland Health, but obviously Queensland Health staff are particularly busy at the moment, and rightly so. They're focusing on some other stuff, but we know that it is coming to their attention. The key part of the session last week was about what are the solutions that we need so we can keep operating. So the possible solutions are either to have industry plan for outdoor education providers reinstated, or an approved industry-specific checklist for outdoor education operators. So that would include the exemptions that we had in the revoked industry plan. So as I've said, I think it's unlikely industry plans will come back. So we're more focused at the moment on the industry-specific checklist as a possible solution. So just looking at Peter's question, does that mean outdoor activity providers don't need to use the Check-in Queensland app? Yeah, that's my understanding, Peter, that you don't need to. They say if you want to, you can, and part of that is also about confidence for your participants and your staff. So if you want to use it, you can register for it, you can do it, but it isn't mandatory. I think it's, if you got the system in place, so I guess the question is, why wouldn't you use it? But if you don't have to technically do it legally right now. And that's the only thing I would say is, just in case it tightens up, it might be worth having the system in place anyway. So yeah, that's my understanding of it. So just checking, do we now need to comply with the 1 person per 2 square metres outdoors? This is going to come to where you are, Peter. So you're at the Redlands Bay. At Redlands? Oh, you're on mute, Peter.
Hang on. Yeah, we're sort of Brisbane, Moreton Bay, so sort of Wynnum right through to Redlands.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's
currently under the restriction, yes, but I'm sort of talking about after the restriction.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the challenges we have is if we've got people kayaking or on catamarans, the deck area on a catamaran means that we can't actually comply with our child safety rules. Mm-hmm. If we're complying with the 1 person per 2 square metres. Under the industry plan, being on the water, that was relaxed and we didn't have to comply with that rule. But with the industry plan gone and back to the general rules for outdoor activities, does that leave us in a bind?
Yeah. It potentially comes under that field of play category, so we might get to that. If you're only as an outdoor activity provider, then the changes were that there's no restrictions applying to those sort of things. So it was a big relaxation, and that even came in a while back, but they reinforced it last week. As an outdoor education provider, if it was under that world, then it's slightly different, and there's still some work to be done in relation to the field of play question or activity space. So as I said, the key thing we're focused on right now, and literally working on it yesterday and today, is drafting an industry-specific COVID-safe checklist for outdoor education. So that's what I think is the current best possible solution. So I've got one there. This is something I've just pretty much invented. Like, we haven't been told by Queensland Health that they haven't asked us to do this. But what I thought would be better than them writing one for us is we write one and put it to them and say, here's what we want to, this can work for us. So one of the things I want to do is work through this together today and flag any possible issues and possible solutions to them. So if everyone's happy to do that, I'll pop up the draft and I'm literally going to type it as we go. Yeah, so this is probably, if we can spend the next half hour working on this thing, I mean, I'm hoping you'll all say, yeah, that's awesome, Dom, well done. But if we need to change some stuff, I'm happy we'll change it as we go. So if everyone's happy with that, I'll just pop that up on the screen and we can get stuck into that. So just before we do that, I just saw Adrian popped in the chat that regarding the check-in app, the 134 COVID number advice about school camp scenario was that teachers should preload the students' names prior to attending camp, which, wow, okay. I'm not sure that's particularly practical, but
No.
teachers are going to have sore thumbs, I would say, if they're going to do that. All right. I'll just share this Word document. As I say, this is just a draft that we've been working on. It's not, don't take it as gospel at all. And yeah, it's literally a draft that hasn't even been to Queensland Health. So is that okay, or do I need to expand the view a bit? Is that readable? I can bump it up a bit.
It's fine.
It's okay? Okay, I won't bother doing that. All right, cool. Okay, so as you can see, I have to fix some formatting. So the idea is this is a specific checklist and I've highlighted where I've made changes to the current existing checklist. That's just I'm going to call it the general checklist. So I'm putting that as the context. It's specifically for outdoor ed services. The first one is contact tracing information. And this standard document is what the current checklist says. And I've put a note here and it said collection of contact information involving schools. And that text in yellow is straight out of the industry plan with a little couple of changes to change it to, instead of in the industry plan, it says providers. I've changed it to business will not need to do this, blah, blah, blah. The alternative to that, that's exactly out of the industry plan. The alternative text is what I've put in green. And I just saw guys just put exactly what I was about to say. I've said an alternative one, which is collection of contact information involving groups of school-age children. And where I've changed it to groups of school-age children attending program or venue. Business will not need to collect contact information of the children attending. The business is required to confirm the group organiser is maintaining records of which children have attended. So this would actually be a further restriction on what we had in the industry plan, because the industry plan was specific to say that dispensation regarding contact information for school, it was only for schools and school groups. So my question is, and this is one that it's a pretty big question, is do we seek to have this broadened a little bit? Because don't forget, everything last week was about the easing of restrictions, the further relaxation of restrictions. My only concern about doing that is it might, and I don't know this for sure, but it might take a little bit longer to get approved by Queensland Health. But my thinking at the moment is we ask them for what we need. If they come back and say no, then we can say, well, here's the one straight out of the industry plan. Comments, questions? You can say, don't be ridiculous, just write the thing, but this is what I need questions on, or need answers on, I suppose.
I just wondered, Dom, if they might shy away from it, because we'd be heading down the path of a industry plan type scenario where there's multiple options for people to be operating. So if we were to go ahead, if this was approved, we'd be running 2 checklists for our clientele, one for the general groups and one for the school age. Whereas if we promoted just an exemption, which entails detail, and run with the general checklist, they might feel more comfortable with that in passing it. And that way we've got one checklist that does everything, just with a school exemption with detail. School age exemption.
Sorry, Tim, I missed a little bit there, but I think, so you're saying you'd run with the general checklist for non-school groups, even though they're
we'd have to.
children.
No, as in like in our example, on weekends we'd have mixed groups coming in, so churches and clubs and things like that that wouldn't be solely school age children. So if we hold an exemption for the school age running with the general checklist, that would cover both scenarios and still get us what we all need for the school age kids.
Yeah, so my question really is, do we go with the text in yellow or green? So the yellow bit is straight out of the industry plan. So industry plan is the exemption for the contact tracing in the industry plan is actually only for schools. It's not for school age children. So it says where schools are attending, you've got to have the contact information. You don't need the contact information of the kids, you need it of the adults, but you've got to get the contact information for a point of contact at the school. That's the wording out of the industry plan. So the green text below it is a further relaxation beyond what's in the industry plan that was revoked. So I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, school age, that way it encompasses things like summer camps and things like that.
Yeah, so, but it also works for like scouts and guides and boys brigade, that sort of thing. The only issue is, and this is the big question that I really have, and Adrian's just flagged it as well, the yellow is already approved by the CHO, so it should be an easy win. And then Peter's just gone, the green's better if you can get it, and that's a big if. So this is my question of, are we better off going with what's already approved, which should be a smooth sailing? Sorry, Peter, for the pun. But are we better off going yellow, which is smooth sailing, or do we go green, which potentially could take longer, which means, you know, week 1 of term 3? And this is the exact question I don't know the answer to. I need some guidance from you as people from the industry on it. Anyone? Is it a Solomon question, and do you just go for green and
sorry,
knock it back? Yeah, mate.
It's Guy here, mate. I think whatever we need to do to keep rolling, so keep the yellow. If it requires us to collect a few names, write down pieces of paper, I think that's all possible work that we can make happen. Even if it's, you know, kids show up and they all sit down and write down their names on a piece of paper. I think if we are asking Queensland Health to look at new information on top of everything else that they're doing at the moment, it's just going to, you know, fall down the list of their priorities, and we're going to be sitting waiting for answers.
Yeah, just, I guess, bear in mind, we're talking the whole outdoors here. So guides and scouts particularly have been using the outdoor ed providers plan right through, and that's let them keep doing the good things they do. So I'm looking for a solution that works as much as possible. I did just see Danny said, ask so we have a chance of approval, be aware of the yellow option, and maybe the option, like maybe we say, we've got 2 different options. This is our preferred option, but if you won't agree to that, this one, which is the yellow. Because what I'm trying to do, yeah, so I see Tim's comment, go with yellow, but put school age rather than school. I don't want them thinking I'm trying to pull the wool over their eyes. I want to say I'm either using the wording straight out of the industry plan, or, because part of this is their trust for us, and we've got a really good relationship with Sport and Rec, and through that to Queensland Health. So there's no way I'm going to try to trick them into just saying, oh yeah, I've just changed it a little bit. Because, you know, it'll come back to bite us eventually, and I'm just not going to go there. So it's either we say, here's our preferred option, but if you won't agree to that, maybe this is the way we do it. Here's the wording exactly out of the industry plan as a plan B. I know outdoors people like having a plan A and a plan B. Donna's just flagged school age will also cover PCYC clubs, Rotary clubs, Scouts, Guides. Yeah, that's exactly right. So maybe I'll go green and have yellow as the plan B. Does anyone think that's foolish? Danny's agreed. Guy, can they reinstate the industry plan while we're waiting? Mate, I don't think that's going to happen. That's what we've asked for, but don't think it's going to happen. So I think this is the good thing about this is if we can get this through quickly, it actually puts in the stuff in the industry plan. So are we happy with the green wording I've put there? So it literally is groups of school-aged children attending the program or venue. The business will not need to collect contact information of the children attending. Business required to confirm the group organiser is maintaining records of which children have attended. So that's putting it back on, you know, whether it's, if this is, let's say it's an organisation like Baden Powell Park, the Scouts camp. If they're having a camp, then whoever's coming there with the group of kids needs to keep the contact information like schools have had to do all the time. So that actually can work well there. Business will need to collect contact information for adults attending, and that would be through using the app. That's what it says up here. So, and that includes using for staff as well, for using the app. So, and then business will need to collect information for point of contact of the group organiser. So that doesn't make sense. I need to change that. The point of contact for the group organiser, who can provide details of the school-aged children attending if required. Comments, questions? Happy with it? Let's see what happens. I'm just going to get rid of that Z because my father's an English teacher. Okay, big thumbs up from Adrian. So the next one's the occupant density and physical distancing. So what I've done is, this is the text from the current checklist, and I'm trying to show them how I'm changing it as well as this. So the first one, ensure patrons are seated while eating and drinking. That needs to stay there. I don't think that's a big deal. And don't forget, this is within the outdoor education. It's really in the indoor spaces what we're talking about here. So mostly. The next one is in the checklist. Operating an area for dancing is not permitted unless conducting a structured dance class. So it seems you could still do that right now in the rest of Queensland that's not in lockdown. For indoor, the next one, this is straight out of the current checklist. For indoor spaces, implement measures to restrict patron numbers to occupant density as per the restriction direction or other. And I put adult in there. So I'm trying to distinguish between adult and school-aged children in this one. And then it says, or other direction. So Danny's just put, what about when they lift the need to be seated while eating? I don't know what the answer to that is, mate, because at the moment, that's what's in the checklist. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I'm just trying to understand if they approve this as that as locked in as an industry plan was, which means you've got to wait on standby, or do we go if the standard checklist changes to more favourable, you know, e.g. lifts that requirement, then ours automatically gets updated, just like they used to say a health directive trumps an industry plan.
Yeah,
checklist trump an approved checklist.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what would happen. Like, these checklists have been updated 5 times this week. Like they've updated them and put them out again, and it's actually quite confusing. Like, you should have, if you were operating this week since last Friday, I think you should have had one checklist in place for Friday and Saturday, another one for Sunday, a different one for Monday, and then a different one came in on Tuesday. I don't know if that's 5, but it seems to boggle my mind. So I assume that that point may be taken out, but I think for now we need to put it in because it's a rule that's I believe is right across Queensland right now. I need to check that for the general one, but I'll highlight that as well in a different colour.
Sorry, Dom, it's Tim. In the current checklist for the areas that weren't impacted by the lockdown, it's not in there.
It's not in there for, okay.
Yeah, because it currently got 2 checklists that are updated on the 28th of June. One for those that are in the lockdown areas and one for the rest of Queensland. And it's not in the rest of Queensland
Okay. All right, I'll make a note there to remove it. I might just say, is it okay to remove this?
Is that because in the impacted areas there is no indoor dining? It's only takeaway.
No, but there will be from tomorrow. For tomorrow, if you're running a session in what was an impacted area, but you still have to have the seated eating and drinking. I understand. So I think that's why it's in there.
So we're still really waiting on the latest advice to come out of what this is going to, what this means for the impacted areas now.
For the non-Brisbane and Moreton Bay, yeah, so Sunshine Coast,
Yep.
Gold Coast, Redlands, etc.
Yep.
And sorry for just throwing everyone else's and etc. Townsville and Palm Island, you are important, and so are those other local government areas. Yeah, so for them, I think it's going to be, you've still got to be seated while eating and drinking. And I think that might be why it's in there in that one. So I don't think that was just going to disappear for the next couple of weeks, and then it could go, so I'll ask a question and ask Queensland Health that one, I suppose. The dance class question. So Donna's just said, yeah, the Health Minister said on the news this morning, we need to wear masks and be seated while eating and drinking for the next 2 weeks. And I assume that's in the places that were in lockdown. Jess asked a question, dancing. We run bush dance for a lot of schools. Is that a dance class? I think if you specifically described it as a dance class, that'd be up to you. But just remember, we're not trying to bend rules here. I think if it's a dance class, it's a dance class. If it's not, it's not. So that's really up to how it's going to work for your business or your organisation. But that one is specifically in the checklist right now. So that's why I've left it there. So the next one is indoor spaces, implement measures to restrict adult patron numbers to occupant density. And I changed it to as per the relevant restrictions, direction or other direction, rather than the actual checklist has the actual density stuff. And this exactly goes back to Danny's point about if you put the 1 per 4 square meters in there. Okay, so I just saw Tim, if you put the 1 per 4, then this thing has to be updated more often. So Tim, the dance restriction isn't in the rest of Queensland, so I'll just put the same comment on that one as well. As I say, I've been working on this yesterday and today, but this is why I really want feedback as we go along on this. This isn't something that is set in stone or anything else, but this is what I'm suggesting here. We change it to as per the occupant density, as per the relevant direction to that one. And the same thing on the next one. It says for outdoor spaces, implement measures to restrict adult numbers to occupant density as per that, and take this stuff out. And then this is the new text, the yellow bit that I put in. School-aged children may exceed the occupant density requirements for adults, however, should be encouraged to maintain physical distancing to the extent possible. So that's pretty much what was in the industry plan before. And the industry plan, remember, had school-aged children. It didn't say groups from schools for the occupant density bit. So that, as far as I'm concerned, already been approved by the CHO. So I don't think that's going to be a drama to get through. Comments, questions? Have I worded it properly? Happy to keep going. Because the next one, this is one I've just inserted in, but it probably doesn't necessarily have to be there, but I think it's good to have a reminder there. So there used to be the field of play rules was incorporated into what they called the return to play guide, which was approved by Queensland Health, and Sport and Rec did a lot of work on it. The return to play guide doesn't exist anymore. It's a bit like the industry plans. It disappeared when the asteroid hit us last Friday morning. So the return to play guide had the bit about what is the field of play or activity space. So it's on the government website. They still have that same sort of wording, and I've copied that wording off the government website to put this point in. So saying when we're conducting recreation activities, physical contacts are permitted on the field of play or activity space, but physical distancing is required for adults when off the field of play or activity space. And the bit I was thinking about here was a little bit like the bush dance. If you're doing that indoors, technically you should have to have physical distancing and everything else for adults as well as kids. So saying if you're doing indoor sport right now, on what's on the government website, if you can do it indoor sport, that's the wording: physical contacts permitted on the field of play, but as soon as you're off the field of play, you've got to go back to physical distancing for adults. So I've tried to capture that in that one statement for outdoor education. Comments, questions? Does that make sense? I'm not sure if you guys have all gone to sleep, but I'm hoping it does make sense and you're happy. Guys just said are exempt from rather than may exceed. Where's that, mate? In the one above?
Yeah, in the school-aged children may exceed the occupant density. If we use the term exempt from it, it's less, we're not asking for more. We're just saying exempt.
Yeah. But don't forget, this is actually about what applies to the organisation, not to the kids. And so I've used the wording exactly out of the industry plan there, I think. I hope I did. I'll probably change it. But it's not, the exemption it's not an exemption for the kids. It's an exemption for the business or the organisation. So I think if we said the kids are exempt from it, that doesn't necessarily help the organisation as much. I'd rather have it as, say, school-aged children may be allowed to exceed or may exceed.
Yeah, I think the current wordings you've got there, Dom's really good, because it would imply that as a government official reading it, they might go, okay, there might be one or two extra in a cabin. Whereas if we say exempt, they might just think, we're racking and stacking as many as we can in there. So I think it sort of implies a need and a desire to still promote the social distancing.
Yeah, we're not going to go silly, basically, what you're saying, Tim.
Correct.
Hopefully that's what they see in that. So yeah, and you can't really with the physical distancing, and that's what we put to the extent possible, which I think is the wording that's in the industry plan right now. Yeah, so guys just said, yeah, agree with Tim. Cool. Okay. So, and then the bottom one is straight out of the current checklist says encourage people verbally or through signage to observe physical distancing of 1.5. So I should have said this at the start. Don't forget this checklist, every single operator who previously was working under the outdoor ed plan to keep doing those same activities, you're going to need to be able to go through and check every single one of these boxes and sign it at the bottom line. So just if there's anything in here that you go, oh, I don't think we can do that, or it doesn't work, please say so, because I'm trying to write this thing that's going to work for our industry and also work for the Chief Health Officer and Queensland Health, obviously. But please sing out if there's anything here that you feel is a little bit shaky. I want to hear about it. And on that said, happy to go back to the top after we're done, because there's much more here. So masks, customer, this is a modified again, the existing wording. All customer facing workers are to wear masks when interacting with guests or patrons. And I've plonked this yellow bit in. So unless wearing a mask will introduce a significant hazard for the worker, guests or patrons. So what I'm saying there, and I was thinking actually of Peter's situation that he mentioned earlier with the catamarans. I don't think it's appropriate for an adult to wear a mask while on a sailboat with a group of kids or even other adults. As a worker, you're a customer facing worker, but what this does is it allows the organisation to do an assessment and say, no, that introduces a significant hazard. So for that reason, we're not going to do it. I would say you should document that, but that's what I'm trying to put this in to give us some space to manage it.
Dom, just a question. Obviously, 0.3 masks only appears under the restricted business checklist in impacted areas, and of course it doesn't appear at all under the other checklist for non-impacted areas, which we all expect will go back to in next to no time, and then you're going to have a mask section in that's not in at all in the standard checklist.
Yeah, and I have this question of, would they actually have that as an exact question of, do we even need this section? The problem is, I don't think the areas that have been impacted, so like the Sunshine Coast, etc., Somerset, Logan, the ones I forgot before, I think for the next 14 days, you're going to need to wear masks. So we can't just not have it there.
Yeah, that's true. But
so
wouldn't you be able to write what you said before, that if it no longer applies in the standard checklist, then it's gone? Yeah.
So you reckon I'd just bring this one? I'll put a question there, but I think they're going to say no, mate. But I'm happy to ask the question. Like,
well, even if the comment's a little different, even if the comment is not to remove it, but when the standard, when restricted, when it's not applicable anymore, then we don't need that section at all.
Same as the exactly
you
the same wording as the density.
Yeah, you had it worded somewhere else like that, Dom. Yeah.
I put to occupant density as per that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so the occupancy density is as per the relevant checklist. Really, that should apply to all masks,
everything,
the seating, and the other one where you put your comments.
Yeah, the only thing is that there's always an occupant density for anywhere in Queensland, right? There always is an occupant density, but for masks, it's only when it's required by the direction, right?
That's to the seating one that you had up earlier as well, Don. Seating's only in the areas that are under the same checklist as masks at the moment.
Yeah, and so I've put there, is it okay to remove it since it's not in the general checklist? So I think I'll work on that, but maybe if required by direction, and the same thing there. Yeah. Anyway, I'll work on that because I think you're right. You make a good point. I'll clarify that one and just see how it's going to work. But I've put this one here. School-age children are not required to wear masks. And I put in green here. This is an alternate test. This is my comment. I don't know if Queensland Health will even take that on because right now, Queensland over 12 are required to wear masks when they are required to. So that one and most of this thing about masks is actually about workers. So maybe it's not required because I would say no one's going to have school-age children as workers, except if you had 17-year-old volunteers. And that does happen within our industry.
Excuse me, Dom, could we, in your significant hazard for the workers, guests or patrons, you think it might be useful to have a point in there about facilitation or whilst giving and receiving instructions, just so they understand the safety aspect of needing to remove your mask to give and receive instructions during an activity. And they're your facilitator, instructor, guide, whatever language you want to use around that, is actually exempt from covering their mouth whilst you need to be reactive to safety and etc. etc.
Yeah, Guy, I started to put that in and then I thought, but hang on, there's going to be so many different times. So that's why I tried to make it a bit more generic, but I think what I'll do is explain what we're talking about here in my notes to Queensland Health. So that I actually did start to write pretty much what you were just saying. So any of these changes we're going to need to justify. That's probably a key thing. So explain and give examples in supporting document. Yep. So I unless you guys say otherwise, I'd prefer to leave it general, but and explain it more fully in the document rather than trying to put that in the checklist, because otherwise we could say you only get the exemption to wearing a mask when you are actively facilitating the activity. And I'm not sure that that actually works for everything. Like I would say food service, it probably isn't a big deal to be wearing a mask. And I think that probably makes sense. But like you say, the facilitation is probably the key part. But does anyone else have any other, do you get my point, Guy? Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. Okay.
I'd agree, Dom. I think if you start going down the route of being very specific, it becomes too different from the other checklists that are out there. And I think that's probably one of the strategies is that this is very similar to what they have already released and approved. So, if it sort of parallels that, I think you'd be better off. The checklists don't go into explicit detail around, other processes, which businesses be undertaking. So around food service or such, like there'd be so many different scenarios that they could cover off on, but it's very generic wording. I think, we'd probably be better off doing the same thing.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Mike. So the last one, as I said, I don't know if we'd get away with the school-aged children.
Sorry, Dom. Sorry. Masks, they don't take effect when you're outdoors, though. So even now, it's only covered up our group indoors, so if we're outside with participants.
No, it does say right now, masks if physical distancing can't be done outdoors. So that's in what have been the restricted areas, right?
So if you're 1.5 metres away from your audience, you don't need to have a mask on.
No, that's right. So, but don't forget, it's also if in some spaces you can't be, like Peter's example of on the boat, and then it doesn't make sense to be wearing a mask because you fall over, you could actually drown. So I think it is still important to have it, that if it's going to introduce a hazard, and it sort of says that there actually are these guidance documents that are on the government website that link into this. So there's a little bit more detail. There's not a lot more detail in those guidance documents, so I think it's still worth having that in there. But hopefully this section could get removed completely, which is what Danny flagged before. So I've changed it to adult guests or adult patrons to wear masks on entry and exit, because this is really written as if it's a cafe or a restaurant, I think. And then I literally just took out and when they leave their seat, because it doesn't work in our setting. So hopefully that'll be okay. And then that wording, this can be achieved through signage, is in the current checklist. The enhanced cleaning, I've left that as per the checklist, which is the checklist that's expected to be followed by every restricted business. Sorry, I just saw a comment there. Donna just said this affects school camp kitchens. Sorry, Donna, are you talking?
For instance, I work at PCYC Bornhofen, and for us just lately, we've had to wear masks in the kitchen and when serving, and then when the clients come in back indoors, when they come up for their meals, they have to wear masks, but when they get to their table to start eating, they can take it off. So because we can actually come under the restaurant food catering industry as well. So for like places like PGL and like Talabudgera Creek School Camp and stuff like that, we actually come under, even though programs come under you guys outdoors, we actually come under the restaurant one.
Yeah.
And once they come inside.
Yeah. So in the old industry plan, it referenced the other industry plans.
Yeah.
So it gets all interlocked.
It's very confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's on the masks, and I'm hoping, like I say, that if required by direction, and I'll have to fix the wording on that, but should manage that. So if it's not then required by direction, that drops out anyway. The enhanced cleaning, this is one that I think I didn't want to make any changes to it because it's applicable to everyone. I think how it could work is, as far as defining what's frequently touched and infrequently touched surfaces, you can do that within your organisation, within your venue. But the surfaces used by customers, such as tables, this is straight wording straight out of the checklist, must be cleaned and disinfected between customers. And that one was raised last week. I don't know what the solution is to change that other than change it to between groups of customers or something, but I don't know if we get that as a relaxation. Does anyone have a comment on that one? Oh, thanks, Sam. Sam's got to go for another meeting just for fun. And Peter just said about the enhanced cleaning life jackets. So, Peter, we didn't put the quaternary ammonium disinfectants. That's what Queensland Health have put in the general one. So, yeah, that's
that was a real headache early on, was that we were supposed to either steam clean or chlorine clean life jackets. So that really wasn't appropriate.
Yeah. So that was discussed. Like, I can remember having a discussion more than 12 months ago about the quaternary, I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, sorry, ammonium compounds was seen as a solution for a lot of outdoor equipment for cleaning, but sorry, not for sanitisation. And there was also a big discussion about the difference between cleaning and sanitising, where cleaning is really removal of dirt, etc. So yeah, it is good that it's there, and that's straight off the government. Where this is the existing checklist. I haven't changed anything there. So Donna just said. So Danny said we have groups sanitise after every meal anyway, and Donna said do the same and full sanitise after each group. So maybe that's fine as is. If that's not going to cause dramas, then we don't have to get Queensland Health to even think about it, because they're saying yeah, we'll do what everyone else is doing, which I think is reasonable. Like. So if anyone has any other dramas, please let me know. The health and hygiene section. So this is straight again. I've just copied exactly what's on the existing one. Hand washing facilities made available throughout the business for use by visitors and workers. If hand washing is not practical, alcohol-based sanitizer available. Then they say what it has to be, and then about the entry to the centre. And they actually say other than a safe travel zone country, which at the moment the entire list for that is New Zealand, but that's a good addition, which I had asked for that to be added to the industry plan back when we thought the industry plan was going to continue. So basically at the moment, that's really good that that's in there. And then the rest of them is as per the other stuff. So I don't, the interesting bit for me, and this is personal interest, I guess, a bit, is that they listed the symptoms there. I've just left it as is, but at one point they changed all of the documentation to had any symptoms of COVID-19, but now they're going back to listing symptoms. So I just think that's interesting. It's trying to make it more clear, I suppose. So I just saw a couple of comments. Mark's just said, yeah, it's good for groups to take responsibility for those who are coming next, and that's a good point too. And then in relation to disinfecting life jackets, Donna said a pH level disinfectant that guides can use. So yeah, I think as long as what you'll have to do is check that it lines up with what they're talking about here. And there is this list on that website as well. So I'd be making sure that it's it complies with what they're talking about there. And there's also a guidance document on the website for sort of each of these sections has its own one. And I know we're going a little bit over 12 o'clock. If you have to go, please do. But if you're able to stay, I appreciate it too, just so we can finish this off. The staff unwell or have COVID-19 symptoms, let's be honest, they shouldn't be coming to work anyway. So that makes sense. No matter how mild, encourage them to get tested. Again, that's sort of common sense at the minute. And then workplace health and safety. I've left this exactly the same as the one side. It's pretty general. And then, you know, it does talk about the psychosocial risk factors, including potential aggression, transmission associated with deliveries, contractors and visitors, which we've been managing, and then risk of exposure to hazardous chemicals used for cleaning and disinfection, which is, again, being managed. So that's the bottom of the checklist. So, as I said, every organisation would need to put the name, sign it, and date it. And it's specific to a location. So I just want to mention that, because if you're running multiple sites, you can't just have this at your head office to say this is what's going to happen to every site. You need one of these for each site as well. And that would apply right across to every other business in Queensland. So that's it. As I said, so Danny's just said, can we go back to section 2? Yep. So Peter's also said, concerning uranium for life jackets and chlorine for kayaks. So again, just check that. So happy to go back to section 2, Danny. Did you have a specific question or just interested to read it again?
Interested to read it and just wanted to make sure the ticketed thing was totally gone. I just was making sure of that. But I'm also curious, what are people doing for the next 2 weeks for ticketed?
Yeah, mate, as I said, I'm hoping that we can try, and I don't, like I said, we haven't even been told that they're going to do this, but if I'm reading the tea leaves properly, us getting ahead of the curve and saying, here's one we prepared earlier, is going to help things along. And I'm even going to, if I get this finished today, I'll send it to them today and I'll say, here's a draft. Is this what you're looking for? And if so, how about it? Rather than waiting to be told, oh, you know, sometime next week, yeah, how about you prepare one? I'd rather get it to them and get ahead of it. So that's my take on it. But yeah, so I haven't put anything in there about that seated and ticketed business because I think it's too confusing, to be honest.
I like the way you've got it. So just outside of this though, just for the next couple of weeks, for those who are trading, what are they actually doing to comply, you know, with the ticket thing? So yeah, what you got there is fine, Dom. I was just curious from there.
Thanks, mate. So does anyone have any comments on how you are operating, particularly those, I guess, who are in the formerly impacted areas as of 6 o'clock tonight? Is there, you know, ideas on how it can operate, particularly for week 1 of term 3, I suppose, is probably the bit. So Tim's just said some are using assigned seats in dining areas, which, yep, I think that's possibly what's going to have to happen temporarily, whether it's assign a table to a cabin or, I don't know, it depends on how your venue's set up too, doesn't it?
It's only because in the actual information at the moment, it says that you have to have a record of assigned seat number by way of a ticket.
Yeah. I guess the question could be, you know, I don't know how you do that, but when someone books in, you say to them, you know, just like you've always said, you're in cabin 2, bunk 7, and you say, and table 2, chair 7. I don't know. And this is question. I just saw a few comments coming in. Split dining and hall use to comply with the density. Just the same, no ticketing as it's fixed seating. Okay, I'm not too sure. In context there, Jess. And then guys said 1 per 4 square metres in accommodation will create a challenge, but tents might be an option. And that's something a couple of people have said to me, like, what if you split your group and had half of them out in tents? But yeah, I see. So you've just said fixed seating as built in, like in stadiums. So you think that ticketing only applies to fixed seating? Okay, I'm not sure about that one, but again, it devil's in the detail of a lot of this stuff, as it always is, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the intent of it, you know, in our context. Whereas, you know, what value does that add by having, you know, participants sit in a ticketed seat when they're, you know?
I think the intent really is about things like if you had 10,000 people at a stadium, then you can know that the zone around the people are, you know who's there, and you can restrict that contact tracing. But I don't really get it. Yeah, if it's if it's a whole group of kids who are interacting without any contact, without any physical distancing while they're involved in the activities, it doesn't really make that much difference when they're together in a dining hall briefly. I think it makes a difference if they're in a cabin together overnight, breathing the same air all night. I think that's where it makes a big difference, but I'm not too sure. So Donna's question about 1 per 4 square metres applies to tents. This is the other question we've asked about just in outdoor activities. So if we're saying a tent is outdoor activity, then potentially it doesn't apply. It's only the indoor spaces where where that applies. The outdoor spaces bit on adults is in question as well. So yeah, so Danny's one, prefer to avoid 1.5% social distancing is very limited for dining, etc. Yeah, I think that's where we had it as should be encouraged for school-aged children. But for adults, it is still in there as far as when you're off the field of play, which it would be, it is still required for adults. So, yeah. Any other questions, comments? Do we want to roll through any of this, or have you already seen enough of it?
I was just going to say, we've got groups coming in this weekend once the restrictions are lifted. And the only way we can fit them in is under this ticketed assigned seating info for school groups that are coming. So just thought I'd share, we've actually printed a name label for every person and physically sticking it to a chair so that we can get around the allocated seating and taking a record of where everyone's sitting, so at least we've got it covered so that we can have more than the 100% capacity. Otherwise we just physically won't fit all our groups in.
Yeah. So you've got a system where you effectively are ticketing them to specific chairs for their stay.
Yeah, I just can't see any other way around it in the wording that's there, where it says ticket and allocated seating means a fixed seat where they're given a record. So that's why I wanted to know, has anyone else come up with any other way to make that work other than, you know, actually physically ticketing everyone and having a record of where they physically sat?
Yeah, I think the big part is this stuff. Some of this stuff don't forget, this checklist is very generic and it's designed for all the different spaces that across the state that they're trying to deal with. So it is dealing with the football stadiums. It's also dealing with cafes and restaurants. So I think in a restaurant, I don't know that they're going to record which seat every person sits at when they can have dining indoors, but they will record which table your group, and they've always have recorded where you're operating. I'll just go back to the comments. Tim just said, informed when industry plans in place, marquees considered an inside space even with no walls. So I've had different people tell me they were told different things about that one. I've been told if it's a marquee with walls, it becomes an indoor space, and a marquee with no walls, it was an outdoor space. And I don't know really what the overall answer is to that one, mate. It almost depends who you ask and when, because it was considered a structure. Okay. Again, as I say, some of this stuff comes down to interpretation, and yeah, I've certainly tried to ask those questions and get a firm answer. Yeah. So does anyone else have any other questions? I know we've gone quarter of an hour over already. Are we happy with what we've sort of got this draft? And as I say, please don't, how do I say this? I don't want to get your hopes up too much, because I'm doing this proactively. I haven't been told to do it. I haven't been asked to do it. I'm just doing it because I'm hoping it gets us somewhat ahead of the game. So if this comes to nothing, I'm sorry for wasting your time, but I certainly understand the issues that everyone's facing. So that's the thing. It's the key part is really the timing on this. So the sooner I can get this into them, the sooner we can actually get it in effect if they choose to go that way. But it doesn't have any effect right now. So questions? I've just seen, thanks for that one. Better to be ahead of any requests. Thank you. So Adrian just shared an indoor space, area, room, or premises that's substantially enclosed by roof and walls, regardless of whether the roof or walls are part of them are permanent, temporary, or open or closed. Thank you, mate. And thanks, Donna. Yeah, I mean, this is one that really had to, if we get it moving and if we get it through, then hopefully it gets things back to what we had as much as possible. And yeah, but a big thank you really needs to go to everyone who's contributed to it and who's obviously thought through a lot of these issues as we've gone along. Let us know if you come up with some, you know, while you're having lunch, if you think of something that we hadn't thought of, let me know, please, because I'm going to work on this the rest of today and try to get it to them this afternoon. So please just flag it with me. If you need to give me a bell, please do. But yeah, happy to, hopefully this will be a distant memory at some point, but all of you will have been involved in developing this if it does get implemented. So I'm just going to go back to my good old PowerPoint because of my, as I said, it's a possible solution. That's pretty much it. Thanks for coming. Our next scheduled session is the 16th of July, but if we have to, we'll run another one of these. And that needn't necessarily just be on Friday next week. It could be whatever day. If we get, you know, if we need more feedback on one of them, we'll just put something out and we'll try to run an unscheduled session like we did last week. We've got a heap of resources on our website. We're updating that as we can. But just to end on a, you know, good note, please remember the Outdoors Queensland Awards nominations. Really important, I think, at times like this that we celebrate the amount of work, that the good things that are going on out there, as well as the things that are potentially stopping us from doing good things, unfortunately. But yeah, just if you get a chance, please have a look at the awards and that new award, the AQIA Workforce Development Award. I think there's plenty of organisations out there doing good things in workforce development. So that's why we wanted to acknowledge it with a new award. So I'm going to sign off. Look after yourself, look after others, and look after the planet. Thanks very much for coming today, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.